We often assume censorship needs a dictator, a central ministry telling people what to think.
Right. That's the common image.
But Herman and Chomsky, in Manufacturing Consent, they show us something really wild. They argue that a media system can function as an effective and powerful ideological institution without any overt coercion at all.
It's the structural constraints doing the work, money and power shaping the narrative before a single word is written.
Exactly. So let's unpack this. Here are the most game-changing essential insights from the book Practical Wisdom that could really transform how you think.
And the first insight is a huge mythbuster. I mean, everything you thought about propaganda requiring some formal Ministry of Information, it's just wrong, according to them.
So how does it work then?
In market-driven societies, the book argues that a persistent bias just happens. It happens naturally through market forces, through the internalized assumptions of journalists, and just the daily routines of the institution.
The profit motive.
Profit motive and a heavy reliance on advertising. That's the core claim.
Okay, so here's the simple way to apply this. Next time you're reading the news, don't ask who ordered the story. Instead, ask yourself what structural constraints might have shaped it before an editor even saw it.
A completely different way of looking at it.
And the authors give us a framework for that, a 5-step system they call the 5 filters. News has to survive all 5 to reach the public.
Right.
So let's break them down. Number 1 is ownership. We're talking about major media conglomerates that ultimately control the narrative. And number 2 is advertising.
Which means the content pretty much always has to appeal to the affluent audiences that advertisers are trying to reach.
Exactly.
And for anyone trying to be truly media literate, the 3rd and 4th filters are, well, they're just crucial. Number 3 is sourcing.
Meaning where the news comes from.
Yes. Reporters rely heavily on government and corporate, routine sources. It's low cost, it's easy, but it inherently favors those powerful voices. And then there's flack.
Flack? Now wait, you're saying this isn't just, online criticism.
No, not at all. As the authors explain it, it's organized backlash. Coordinated threats of lawsuits, ad boycotts, big public criticism campaigns.
All used to discipline journalists who step out of line.
Precisely. It keeps people in check and reveals this systemic bias that favors state and corporate interests.
This is Mindful Moments, by the way, our YouTube channel offering AI book analysis, summaries, and critiques, inspiring reflection and rational thought.
And that leads us to the 5th filter, which is dominant ideology. But the broader point here, and maybe the most effective part of the propaganda, is the subtle narrowing of what can even be imagined as a serious position.
I see. So the mass media define the range of responsible opinion.
And then they allow, a lively debate within those tight boundaries.
The before and after transformation here is huge. Before, you might follow a heated debate and think you're really politically engaged. But afterwards, you realize that political consent is manufactured partly by limiting the entire menu of ideas. They call it managed pluralism.
Which raises a really important question. What systemic alternatives are just completely off the table in today's policy discussions?
The million-dollar question. And the book uses these incredibly detailed case studies as X-rays, really, to test the model.
And here's where it gets. Well, it's a very counterintuitive claim. The book says the value assigned to victims' lives is filtered through geopolitical usefulness.
Meaning?
Atrocities committed by enemy states get intense moralizing coverage. The authors call them worthy victims.
But couldn't that just be where the biggest geopolitical interest lies?
Well, the book's claim is more structural than that. It says that comparable abuses by friendly U.S. client states are minimized or just ignored. They become unworthy victims.
And this pattern emerges from the incentives of the institution, not because reporters are malicious.
Exactly. For a practical application, just compare the coverage of 2 contemporary humanitarian crises side by side. Track the differences in volume, tone, and the amount of follow-up each one gets.
What's really fascinating is how the core logic still applies so well to digital platforms, TikTok, YouTube. They didn't exist when the book was written.
But the model fits beautifully. The ownership filter now includes global tech platforms. Sourcing extends to influencers and branded content, FLAC. That's now coordinated online harassment campaigns.
So the book's ideas connect directly. It suggests consent is now micro-manufactured for each individual user, based on our data and algorithms that avoid risk by favoring mainstream content.
Which leaves you with this critical final question to think about. What would a media ecosystem that was actually designed for democratic flourishing instead of just for profit even look like?
If you're ready to go deeper, remember we break this down even further. Start with our 5-minute essential insights, then dive into the in-depth analysis. Next, the summary, and you can end with a comprehensive critique.
Discover genre-based book podcasts at Mindful Moments. Subscribe and nurse your mind on the go.